PDURS FDA regulatory framework and guidelines. Imagine a bustling innovation lab where developers are building a new app called DoseTrack. Designed to help patients take their medication safely, this app tracks dosages and monitors drug levels in real time. The team is excited because they know DoseTrack could improve lives, particularly for patients on medications with narrow therapeutic windows, those that need precise dosing to avoid serious side effects. But before DoseTrack can be released, it must pass through a rigorous FDA regulatory process, ensuring the app will be safe and effective for patients. The FDA has guidelines for software like DoseTrack, known as Prescription Drug Use-Related Software, or PDURS. These guidelines are like a rulebook, making sure the software aligns with the drug's intended purpose and patient safety goals. Under the FDA's framework, PDURS falls into two categories based on how essential they are for the safe use of the drug. FDA-required labeling, this is the must-have information that ensures a drug's safe use. For DoseTrack, which monitors drug levels and alerts patients if they're close to exceeding a safe dose, the FDA considers this function critical. It's essential to the drug's use, much like instructions on a medication bottle. This means that DoseTrack's capabilities must be reviewed by the FDA as part of the drug's main label and included in the Prescribing Information, PI, the official guide for healthcare providers to ensure they're prescribing the drug safely. Promotional labeling. Now, imagine another app, RemindRx, which simply reminds patients to take their medication but doesn't track drug levels. While it helps patients adhere to their schedules, it's not critical to the drug's safe use. RemindRx would fall under promotional labeling, subject to less stringent FDA regulation than DoseTrack. Promotional PDURS can offer valuable reminders and support, but because they aren't as central to drug safety, they don't need the same rigorous review. For developers of PDURS, understanding the FDA's risk-based, evidence-driven approach is essential. They must ask themselves key questions to determine whether their app is FDA-required or promotional. Is the software necessary for the drug's safe and effective use? If DoseTrack alerts patients of overdose risks, it's crucial to safety and falls under FDA-required labeling. Is there evidence of clinical benefit? For software to be in FDA-required labeling, there needs to be evidence that it truly improves clinical outcomes. Does the software connect to a drug delivery device? PDURS that connect to devices, like an inhaler or an injector that sends data to the app, often require detailed mention in the PI since they provide real-time data about the drug's administration. Once these factors are clear, the FDA determines where to place the information in the PI, helping healthcare providers understand how and why the software functions are part of the drug's safe use. End-user outputs from PDURS, like alerts, messages, or data on screen displays, also require FDA review. DoseTrack's real-time alert about overdose risk, for example, would need stringent FDA scrutiny as FDA-required labeling. But simple adherence reminders from RemindRx would fall under promotional labeling. To complete the process, DoseTrack's promotional materials, like brochures and ads, must be submitted to the FDA on Form FDA 2253 before they go public. Any updates to DoseTrack that might change its end-user outputs also need FDA review, especially if they impact drug safety. So, while developing PDURS like DoseTrack or RemindRx is an exciting leap into digital health, the journey doesn't end with coding and design. Navigating FDA's regulatory framework is essential to delivering safe, effective, and innovative software that can make a meaningful difference in patient care. The FDA's regulatory framework for prescription drug use-related software, PDURS, aims to ensure these digital tools are safe, effective, and properly aligned with the drug's intended use. Under the FD&C Act, labeling includes any informational materials accompanying a drug product, which can fall under two primary categories. FDA-required labeling. This is mandatory labeling, integral to the safe and effective use of the drug. FDA requires these components to be rigorously evaluated for their safety impact, especially when the PDURS function is critical. For instance, an app that monitors dosage intake for a drug with a narrow therapeutic window would likely need to be included in the drug's primary labeling and subject to more stringent FDA oversight. The inclusion of this information in the Prescribing Information, PI, enables healthcare practitioners to make informed decisions regarding a drug's safety profile, especially in combination with PDURS functionalities. Promotional labeling. This category applies to PDURS that are less critical for a drug's safe and effective use, often serving as supplementary or adherence-enhancing tools. These materials need to be truthful, non-misleading, and balanced in presenting both efficacy and risks. Examples include apps that offer reminders for medication adherence without affecting patient safety directly. These tools are subject to less rigorous FDA regulation compared to FDA-required labeling. The FDA takes a risk-based, evidence-driven approach to determine whether PDURS functions should be classified as required or promotional labeling. The classification process considers function essentiality, whether the software is necessary for the drug's safe and effective use. Clinical benefit evidence, whether PDURS provides documented improvements in clinical outcomes. Device connectivity, if the PDURS function relies on data directly from a device within a combination product, like an injector or inhaler, which may affect its regulatory categorization. For example, device-connected PDURS, such as a mobile app that records dosing data transferred directly from a drug delivery device, may require detailed mention in the PI. Non-device connected PDURS functions, relying on user input rather than device data transfer, are generally classified as non-essential, optional tools and typically do not require PI inclusion unless they fulfill specific safety needs. End-user output, PDURS outputs, such as screen displays or audio messages, are considered labeling material and need FDA review depending on their role and impact. Outputs deemed essential to patient safety, such as real-time alerts for potential overdose risks, would need stringent FDA review as part of the FDA-required labeling. Conversely, general information outputs, like adherence reminders, would fall under promotional labeling. PI placement, the FDA may specify where PDURS information should appear within the PI, such as the Clinical Studies section for documented clinical benefit or how supplied, storage and handling for device-connected functionalities. Finally, PDURS promotional materials must be submitted to the FDA on Form FDA 2253 upon dissemination. Changes that significantly modify device functions or end-user outputs, especially if requiring FDA review, should be coordinated with the relevant CDER or CBER divisions to ensure regulatory compliance and alignment with safety standards.